Hello, my name is Naomi, and this is my story here at the Mindset Mastery Moments. This is a space where we get to tell our stories as an American immigrant minority females going through the immigration process, how we survived the immigration process, and what we learned from the process, and how are we thriving into the new society, which we call the new world. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Chatting with Slava the Jordanian. I'm your host, STJ, and I am so thrilled to have my newcomer on, Nayo, right? Is that what you say it? Okay. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming on. And I really, really appreciate you making the time in order for us to give our audience a little bit of storytelling and input of that immigration process. Now, let me just, I did some research because you are from the Dominican Republic. So it is very impressive when I did the research and found out that in 2022, 55 of Dominican-born immigrants in the United States were women. This represents a higher proportion than the overall immigrant population, which is 51%, and the general U.S. population, which is 50%. The total Dominican population in the United States was estimated as 2.4 million in 2021, with the majority of, you ready for this? 57% being females.
Wow, that's impressive.
That is huge.
That is really impressive.
Yes, it is. That absolutely says a lot about us as females. We do have the tenacity, the resilience, and the courage to step out of our comfort zone and have that kind of mindset that, you know, we want better life. We want higher education. We want to improve and elevate our lifestyle. So, Nayo, as you would like to be called, tell us your story. Let's start with, how did you end up in the United States?
So, both my parents came into the U.S. My mom was married off young by my grandmother, who raised her. Let me go back a little bit. So my mom was given to my grandmother, who's not my biological grandmother, at a hair salon, right? So her biological mother gave away like 5 of her children to different people. So she grew up with Ramona, which is my grandmother, who passed in 2015. But she brought her over here very young. She wasn't over the age to legally be married, so they kind of altered her documents to bring her here. And she married someone who was a little older, but it was just purely for papers to come into the U.S. So that's how my mom ended up here. My dad, through family who were already residents, he was able to come into the U.S. And then my siblings and we were all born in the U.S. So I was born in Brooklyn, New York. My 2 younger siblings were born in Manhattan, New York. And then I have 2 other siblings from my dad's second marriage. So it's 5 of us altogether. But that's how we ended up here.
Awesome. Big family. I love it. I'm one of 5, and I'm Jordanian, born and raised in Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
So I'm number 2 of 5, and my mom comes from a huge family. My dad is a small family, but his descendant is big. But that's what they did back then, right?
Yes.
They had a lot of kids in order to support the family, in order to have what we call the traditional tribal connection and support, because we put a huge emphasis on family values.
Yes.
And we carry that with us, right, as immigrants. And when we decide to leave our home world to come into the new world, pack all that belief system, we pack all these values, and that sometimes weighs a lot on our shoulders because we have the sense, or we grow up with the sense of duty and responsibility towards our family to make them proud of us in order to achieve more, in order to
Yes.
improve our lifestyle. So so your family immigration was for the purpose of a better life, or
Correct.
okay,
Yes.
so just better opportunity, just like, the majority of the immigrants that
The
come to the United
American dream, pretty much, right? And it's really sad because once you come into the United States, you lose an an essence of yourself or of your culture most times, and it's like you're still trying to stay true to your roots, but you have to adapt to this new system, right? So it like trickles down on the rest of like the more generations, the more you lose that sense of, my roots, where I'm from. You know what I mean? So, and it's a crazy feeling when you go back and it's like I'm home, even though I wasn't born there. When I go visit, I'm like, the air smells different. I feel like, I'm home. You know what I mean? So it's very sad that you have to like adjust yourself to the customs of the US. There's things here that, you just have to get used to. You know what I mean? So it's it's pretty difficult. I know it was a challenge for my mom because she didn't know the language. So that was hard. Um, Even though I grew up predominantly speaking Spanish at home, which is why I'm so fluent. I feel like I haven't had my kids speak Spanish mostly, and it's sad, but that's part of the things that you kind of lose. It's like, your native language. You should be using your native language, right? It's a blessing to have two languages in this country, right? You're valuable. So there's just so many things that it's just like, you lose it.
Well, that's why we're here. We want to really dive into that micro view
Yep.
of what it takes for an immigrant when they displace themselves by default or by design. And when we say that, we mean whether the circumstances were so dire that there was no other way but to be pushed out. That's by default. Now, displacing yourself from your home world by design, meaning that, you did not live in a harsh circumstances, discriminatory circumstances, violent circumstances, and you just looking for, oh, I want to go to school in the United States and see what happens. So
Yes.
it was, you displacing yourself was more as a luxury than
Yes.
a necessity.
Correct.
A lot. So I came to the United States as a luxury. I didn't have to come to the United States because we were okay. I had the option to go back to Jordan because I was born and raised in Saudi Arabia, or come to the United States. So I had options, but the majority, right, of immigrants that displace themselves is by default, meaning that I don't have control over these circumstances. I did not create those circumstances, but guess what? I am being pushed
Hmm.
because of these circumstances to leave my home world,
Yep.
right? And then adjust. So the psychologists or therapists or specialists, they tell you that adjusting an immigration adjustment to simulate or culturate into the new society has a tremendous effect on our well-being, emotional well-being, and mental health. And I hope we can tap into that, whether we
Okay.
have time today, but I hope you come back and we
Yes.
just focus on that, because we have done couple of episodes about the impact of mental health on our culture, whether it plays a big role in our culture and how we see the world, and how we adapt to into the new world, in the Arab world. But I would love to talk about it in more the, within your culture, within your society. So it is a process. It is could be very traumatic. It could be very discouraging. It could be scary, very, very stressful. Like you said, to rip your roots out, leave everybody you love, everything that you know,
Yep.
and embark onto a new world. I mean, even when I think about how they did it back in the day in the 1800s, it's just, I can't wrap my head around the circumstances and the condition. How did they survive that? But so going back to being bilingual, going
Yes.
back to being bicultural, I believe that it is definitely an advantage. Now, I did not believe that back in the day. Back in the day, I struggled, and I even hired a life coach. I hired a healing mentor because I got to the point in my life that my belief system and the values that I had carried through from my home world for the past 37 years here in the United States. They were not serving me anymore. But what I struggled in is that, how is that even possible? This is my heritage. This is my people's belief system, and it's not serving me anymore. So I was so hard on myself in a sense that, no, I rejected that. It's like, no, I am who I am. I am my father's daughter. I cannot change my belief system, because then I will be feeling so guilty, abandoning, like you said, your heritage. But I learned that we don't need to be one or the other. We can be one and the other. Being
Correct.
biculturally competent, multicultural adaptability, talent is an advantage for us. Being bilingual is a huge advantage. We are in the advantage position, not the disadvantage. But unfortunately, the misconception that we came to the Western world, we have to simulate, we have to adapt to that new structure society. It's our duty. We are responsible for that because we made that decision to displace ourselves, and now we have to adapt. And that puts a lot of pressure on us, and that
Yes.
puts a lot of emotional distraction from what we are trying to achieve. And I've seen some of them, my friends that came to the United States, that almost tap into what we call approval addiction. We want to be approved so much within the new society, within the new world. We become addicted to it. People end up
Yes.
divorcing. People end up abandoning their kids. People end up, unfortunately, losing their career, losing their the degree or their education, and end up somewhere that they don't like, and before you know it, they label themselves as, oh, I failed, so
Right.
I should have not come here, and then the guilt kicks in too. So my question, I guess, to you is so you mentioned that the challenge of having a dual language, right? And that is the cultural adaptability. So how did that look like? When did you realize that I am speaking two languages and I have to pick? And who put that pressure on you to pick one or the other?
So mostly society, pretty much, right? So for my mom, it's difficult, and I saw the difficulty like when we would go to schools, right? So if she had to go to school with me, I would have to translate for her, right? Because she didn't know the language. For myself, it's like I can't speak Spanish in school unless I'm in Spanish class, right? But I did have that multiple language, and it's like, all right. So I noticed this is helping me when I'm looking for a job, right? So, for example, one job that I had that we may talk about for later on, I got an actual differential pay for speaking Spanish, right? So I was like, oh, this is interesting, right? First time ever, but like, and then I had another job where I translated, it was like, per diem, where I translated, and that's all I did was translate, and I got paid just for translating, right? So it's like, okay, this can be lucrative, right? In a sense. But yeah, for my parents, I know it was difficult. You have to take on jobs that don't require that you speak the English language. For example, my dad worked at a bakery, right? He did learn the language, so did my mom. he's more fluent than she is, but he took on a job where he didn't have to use the language. You know what I mean? So it's like sometimes you're forced into a situation because this is what they require of you, or they require that you have an education. And another great example is when you're coming from another country, right? You can have a master's degree, you can have a doctorate, right? And you come into this country and it's no longer valid. So that in itself is like, wow, all right, so I'm a doctor in my country, but here I would have to go through the whole process again because my certificate or my degree isn't worth anything here. So it's like, you know, those are the things that I'm just like, I'm grateful that I was born here, because had I gone through the education that I went through here in the country, or, you know, in Dominican Republic, and not be able to use it here, like after maybe spending a whole bunch of money, years on my education, that'd be heartbreaking. So it's like, I can see why people get discouraged, you know, when they come from another country with education and they're like, all right, oh, sorry, you can't use it. You know what I mean? So many things.
So that's fascinating. And to your point, when you are at home with a certain degree, you are being appraised and appreciated in a whole different level.
Right.
I have family members that have higher education degree, and they decided that, okay, I practiced or I worked in my home world, but the money is not enough. It's not economically justifiable. With especially in that region, it's just constant turmoil. Sometimes some countries are worse than other as far as the political stability. So anytime you have political instability in a country, back in the Middle East, the financial sector gets completely destroyed, basically.
Not there, yeah.
So exactly. So the value is not there. Thinking that, okay, I have a degree, I have a status, I have a position academically, let me pursue another country, hoping that I can make enough money to support my family through that degree. Then you come to the new world, and that new world saying, you're not good enough.
Right.
So that's your first rejection.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean it's not good enough? I worked really hard. I invested in myself. Now I'm coming here, sacrificing, right, everything to come here in order to apply myself as a professional in the home world, and you're telling me I'm not good enough.
Right.
So that alone, has a huge impact on our emotional well-being and our mental health too. Now, add to that the language barrier. How can you express yourself? How can you read things? How can you understand your rights? How can you understand the process, the policy, the law, the regulations in order to help you, right, achieve that status again in the new world, in the Western world, or whatever that new world is, so you can start all over. So that is very stressful on our body, on our, like I said, emotional well-being, and on our mental health. So it takes a strong person, a high level of tenacity, high level of resilience, high level of strength for you to stick to it and hoping to come out on the other side as a winner, as a champion. But that's hard to predict because we're sitting here simplifying it and putting it in words. But when you look at it or experience it every single day, through the challenges, social challenges, religious challenges, cultural challenges, custom, the code of conduct, I call it, how to conduct yourself, how you carry yourself. Because, for example, the traditional culture, the classic conservative traditional culture, within the cultures, anywhere in the world, any part of the world has a lot of in common. So I can go to the DR and I'm going to feel like I'm in Egypt. Like they get me. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
We have the tradition and the custom. We have a lot in common. We have a lot of familiarities with a little tweaks. But when you go to a Western world, that's a lot of an adjustment.
Yep.
So I guess my next question to you is: did you seek a higher education here in the United States?
I did, yes. So I was very much influenced by I had a kindergarten teacher, believe it or not, we still talk. But she, aside from my parents always drilling into me the importance of education because of what they went through, right? Because of the challenges that they faced, go to school, finish school, go to college, right? That was always a thing. Um, I'm pretty much a bookworm anyway, so I did like to study since a young age. But I did have this kindergarten teacher who stayed with me throughout the years and always encouraged me to do more, to seek a higher education and all of this, aside from my parents. But I did finish high school. I Let me go back a little bit. So I I was 16 when I became pregnant with my son, who's now 26. And I lived in New York. I came to visit family here in Massachusetts, met his dad. I became pregnant. I went back to New York, and my mom was just kind of like, all right, you're pregnant. What is he going to take care of your kid? Right? Like, so that happened. I ended up moving to Massachusetts with my child's father. In the middle of, I don't know, I don't even think I probably finished the 10th grade or something. Um, so we came here and I finished high school while after having my son so I did finish high school, and it was pretty hard because, it's kind of like it's a stigma to be so young and pregnant, right? Um, but I said, I'm not going to let this stop me. I'm going to continue to do what I need to do, right? I need to do better for my son, right? Because, I was young. So I finished high school. I was able to then sign up for college. I got my associate's degree in liberal arts psychology from Northern Essex Community College. And then I worked, of course, in between. So I had a little pause. I did graduate. Was it? Yes, I graduated Northern Essex pregnant with my second daughter, actually. So that was, another like motivation, just I'm still trying to do better for myself. And then I graduated from Southern New Hampshire University with a bachelor's degree in psychology. I almost pursued my master's, but I'm like, I wanted to do like therapy. I love working with people. That's my thing. Like, I've always wanted to help people. But I did notice with one job that I had as a social worker that I don't think I'm very much meant to directly work with people because I'm too sensitive and emotional. So, I kind of like said, and now I have a great job that I love. It doesn't pay as much, but I'm happy where I'm at. So I said, I'm not going to pursue my master's degree, but I am, pushing my daughters to seek what they love, continue the educational path, because unfortunately, or fortunately, depends on how you look at it, you do need an education in this country in order to survive. Like, that's just what it is. But touching back on, people that come from another country with education, I feel like it's so important to raise awareness and to have like these countries, I don't know how they would do it, but become accredited so that when someone comes from another country, they're able to use that profession here and, take that second language. So take the English language as a course in your country so that when you come here, you don't feel so out of place, right? And you're able to use, what you went to school for. Like, I think that's really, really important. But yeah, that's my educational journey story.
I love how you say, "Yeah, that's it."
Yeah, that's it. That is it. It's not much, right?
Yeah, I didn't go through anything, but that's it. That's about
Yeah,
it. It's
a
funny.
lot. It really was a lot. You kind of want to like minimize it, like, that's it. I did that, right? But it's a struggle, like especially when you're raising a family. Like it's hard. I had young kids when I was going to school and I was working, and it was a lot. It was a lot. Yeah, but I did have a good support system. My husband is amazing. He's very supportive in that journey, and my kids are great. They don't give me headaches, which is amazing. Sometimes here and there, you gotta like pull them back a little bit, but I think so far they're doing what they need to do. And I hope, they reach their goals and they're happy with what they do,
Now it's fascinating, and I've talked to a lot of people. As you know, through my career, I've been in dentistry 26 years, and I've met, Americans, I met, newcomers, I met immigrants that have been here, 9 years, 10 years, and everybody that has left their, home world and came to the United States said exactly those three things: learn the language, get an education, and don't ever forget where you came from.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I'm telling you, people are from South Africa, the Côte d'Ivoire, Senegal, China, India, Nairobi. I have people from Ghana. I have people from, of course, North Africa, Libya, Egypt, Poland, Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan. I mean, Germany. Everybody says exactly the same, especially if you are coming from a third world country, or a country that is been dismantled due to political conflict, war zone, just the lack of resources. But isn't it fascinating? It doesn't matter where we come from. Those three things we constantly advocating for and we are preaching about. Don't ever forget where you come from. Make sure you learn that language, because if you learn the language and you get higher education, my dad used to tell me that, your education is your invitation to the party. So when you get higher education or just education, then you shine, right? People start noticing you. People want to mingle with you. People want to socialize with you. People want to hear you out. People want to listen to your opinion when you are educated. I agree with you 100%. Education is the number one factor or motivator that pulls us or rips us out of our home world into the new world. And then everything else comes within, the social status and the culture, and you build a family and you build a home, you assimilate. And then the process becomes very rewarding as long as you have that mindset. We call it unlimited mindset, by eliminating limited beliefs. Just like in your journey, you did not stop. You had a child at 16. You still went to school. You still finished high school. You still had a family. You expanded your family, but you stuck to education. And sometimes education and knowledge helps us learn how to adapt and how we simulate into the new culture in a healthy way, not an unhealthy way, but also it's almost like it's our shield. We have a saying in Arabic, shahatik slahik. It means like your degree is your armor. It's your weapon to protect yourself from the limitations of society, the limited mindset, the limited beliefs. And that's why I love talking to immigrants. And I think that especially minority immigrants have so much to teach that unfortunately this society, the Western society, they try to ignore, they try to suppress because the majority rule. But we need to break out of that. We cannot be in the echo chamber of stigma and stereotype. Oh, you're just an immigrant. You don't know what you're talking about. You're lucky you're in this country. You owe me, basically. I let you in this country. No, I worked hard to be in this country, because guess what? If I came from my home world into this world and I don't like it, I can always go back. They think we have no other option, or I can go to another country, because according to this also my research, that the majority of the Dominican Republic immigrants that come to the United States, number 2 country is Spain.
Wow.
Yep. Yep. So I was really surprised because I thought after the Spanish colonial history
Yep.
that you don't want to go back to somebody that suppresses our people. But the interesting thing, even North African population, they want to go to France. So Libyans, they immigrate to Italy, other than the United States. Italy took on Libya and they
Yes.
fought against the Italians. The Moroccan, the Tunisians, and the Algerians, which is the North Africa that was part of the French colony, they go to France.
Wow.
Not because they're supporting that nation, it's because when this colonial presence was in North Africa, guess what? Number 1 language is French. So it's language.
Yes.
Right? They feel more comfortable. Why should I learn English where I can speak French and Arabic? I'm going to go to France. Libyans also, they knew Italian. So language is very comfortable. You can communicate, you're very comfortable with. You can communicate, you'll be able to survive it. The society that speak Italian, that has a common language with you. So my first option is Italy. If I don't like Italy, then I can go to the United States or England or whatever, whereas, they speak English. But we pick the spot where we are going to displace ourselves that will be as comfortable and as familiar to us as possible, whether with language or culture. Now, you have a job that you absolutely love, but tell me a little bit about what you said. You are too sensitive?
Yeah. I'm a disaster. Because, so when I had this job as a social worker, it's like you're working with children, right? You see things you don't really want to see. You see things that you don't agree with. You don't feel very supported in what you're doing. It takes away from you as, like, I would come home and just be mentally and physically drained, right? My heart was there, but the system, the way it works, the pressures, the shortage of staff, it just didn't allow for me to be able to pursue that. So in that moment, and this was after getting my bachelor's degree, I said, all right, I wanted to pursue my master's to become a therapist, but I can't sit there in a session with a client, or, and bawl my eyes out with them because they're telling me this personal story. But that's how I am, right? So I said, all right, I sat down one day and I said, I need to do something better for myself because this is just, it's breaking me down and I'm not being good for my family. So I said, all right. And I start looking for something where I'm still working with people. And God just said, here you go, right? Here you go, right? So I did get this job at a nonprofit organization. I work with youth with disabilities, who are autism, all ranges of disabilities. And we go out and teach them. So we go out to schools and we teach them pre-employment services. So how to become employable, how to create a resume, how to, social skills, things like that. Right. And I absolutely love it. I love it because I'm making a difference and it's not so taxing on me. Right. So yeah, I'm blessed. I'm very much blessed.
I'm holding my tears back.
Please, I'm an emotional wreck. Let's not do this.
Oh my God. And that's okay. I mean, I can't even imagine. Seriously, I do see autistic, and we do treat autistic children, autistic adults. We treat, patient with special needs, whether it's sensory issues or they just have really hard time physically and mentally adapting to society and just living in society.
Hard, very hard.
I can't imagine doing your job because as a dentist, I get a little bit of a glimpse of what they are being challenged with, but within that hour they go home, but you are more responsible for like their future and what they're going to
Yes.
achieve and what they're going to do, and you're dedicated to it. I won't be able to do your job. I'm just like you. I'm such an empath. I'm very sensitive to
Me
people,
too.
and it just that would drain me. That would just
Yep.
like I'll be crying every single day. When I interviewed my friend Nada Abukushka, she works for the CDC, but she is nutritionist that traveled pretty much the Middle East and the Republic of Congo and the refugee camps. And I
Yep.
told her, how did you even go home and slept? She goes, Slava,
Oh,
some days I would go home and I just sob. I won't eat meat for a month because these refugees have nothing, absolutely. I'm not saying minimal, nothing. She said some of them, their fridge has a bowl of olive oil and bread. That's it.
goodness. That's horrible.
But but they sit down with her and they say, this son is going to be a doctor. This son is going to be an engineer. This son is going to be a lawyer. And they better not give up on education.
Yep.
So that is amazing. So I applaud you. And we need more people like you to help those unfortunate ones in our society.
Yes.
But I cannot imagine. So you gave up getting your master's,
Yep.
and you're doing this. So you
Yep.
got masters in life, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, from personal experience, I've always known that I want to help people. That's all I've known my entire life is I want to help people. I don't care at what capacity. And, I gave it a try. I did a couple of things. I, had different jobs, but I feel like I'm where I belong now because I don't want to work somewhere where it's going to take away from me and my family. And that's what pretty much that other job was doing. Now I still feel like I'm giving back, right? And it's just so nice to see the joy on these kids' faces when they're like, all right, we're going to work on your resume together, right? And then we work on it, have you volunteered, and then we put this in. And then when you actually print it for them and they see their resume and they see their name and, they're able to now present this in a workplace and say, hey, I am employable, right? Just because I have a disability does not mean that I'm not employable. And it just, that makes my day. Like, that's what keeps me going. And it's not as taxing as, being a social worker. That was a very, I am grateful for the experience, but I would never, ever again. And it just, I had to look for something else because they weren't very accommodating. So I was diagnosed with MS in 2022. I believe it was. Yes, 2022. And I wanted to continue with the job at a lower capacity, so less families, but they weren't very accommodating with that. So I said, all right. So that was another impulse for me to like, and now I feel like with this job, now I relate to these students, right? So now I relate to, I have limitations myself. I see what you're going through, right? It may not be the same, but you have a limitation. Doesn't mean you cannot continue to pursue, life. You're not stuck, right? You keep moving. You learn about what it is that you have, what helps you, what accommodations do you need in order to be successful? And that's what I teach them. And I'm very passionate about it. Like I'm super passionate when I talk to them and I say, listen, I don't disclose much of, what I go through, but I say, I also have a disability. And they look at me like, what? You have a disability? You look pretty normal to me, right? But what is normal? But I do have a disability and I do work and I do have accommodations at work. You can request an accommodation at work for your specific disability. And a lot of them don't know this, right? It's just like, oh, this is new. I can do that. Oh, okay, right? But it just empowers them to be able to, like you say, changes the mindset, right? Changes the mindset and allows them to venture out into, out of their comfort zone and pursue something, which is amazing.
Wow.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah.
You are amazing. My God. You better come back for another many episodes. Oh my God.
Absolutely. I
Oh
would
my
love.
God. I can talk to you for hours. So 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 you're saying that being a social worker
Hmm.
is harder than that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, that place is a revolving door. If things were different, because you do make a difference, there are families who struggle, right? It all depends on your upbringing. There are things that are out of your control. There's things that, you take out on your kids, for example, right? That you shouldn't, but sometimes the situation doesn't allow for you, right? Sometimes you just need that support. But when you are loading, one individual, so one social worker with so many families, you can't give that undivided attention to a specific family and maybe give them what they need. So I feel like a lot of things need to change. You do need people that work from the heart. With this type of thing, a lot of people are in it for the money, which is not, and a lot of people just lose themselves. They're burnt out. So they're like pretty much do the minimum in order to, get through, or on paper, all right, I visited my family this month. Quick notes. No, they need more than that. Like, you really need to get invested and give these families the support that they need. But then the person who's working with them, the social worker, needs to be supported as well. So it's like, it's very hard. It's very hard. That place is just a revolving door. And I wish things would change out of my control, but I experienced it. I think it made me a better person, more appreciative of what I have. Seeing my kids as humans, as individuals, has been a lot, because that's another thing. It's like growing up, it's more, my mother wasn't very loving, but she didn't receive that, because my grandmother was raised to work, right, in the country. In the old country, in the Dominican, she worked. She never went to school. My grandmother worked in like fields like a man, right? And would cook for these men as well, right? Who were working. So it's like, that's all they knew. It's work, 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 work. There was no love. There was no showing affection. There was no, oh, my kids have feelings too. Let me talk to them. How are you feeling today? Right? So there's a lot of things that I've learned that I'm trying to show my children, right? And be as supportive as I can be. At the same time, being realistic about what it is out there, what the real world is. So, um, I have a lot of knowledge, real world experience, right? Am I perfect? No, but I feel like when you learn from your mistakes, or, you experience something, pass that information on to someone else, right? Because it can help. It can be a deciding factor on, you know, what a person can do, or, how it can affect their life or the people around them. So there's a lot. Oh.
So you touch upon a very significant point, that mental health and emotional well-being in our culture, especially our home world, especially
Mm-hmm.
the more traditional conservative that culture is, number one, the more severe or traumatic circumstances are, the importance of emotional well-being and mental health diminishes. There's no
Yeah.
place for it, because you're trying to
No.
survive. You're trying to survive. But what that does, unfortunately, so our parents know what our parents know. They try
Mm-hmm.
to raise us the best they can with what they know. So
Correct.
release the bar, I call it. Release the blame, release the anger, release the resentment.
Mm-hmm.
It's not their fault. They try the
Absolutely
best
not.
they can. Now, that's number one. Number two, we call that, how can you transition that? It's become a transgenerational thing,
Mm-hmm.
that transferring that power to your children. So you're first generation American, your
Yep.
parents are not. So they transfer that power to you. Hey, this is the way it is. Take it or leave it. I don't have time for it. Right?
Right.
Now you have discovered. So you take that and you build it as part of your belief system. Okay, we don't have time for this. Now I'm a mom with children and I'm a wife. I'm going to do the same thing because that's all I know. Now,
Correct.
that transfer of power of that concept that mental health does not exist, it doesn't play upon the way we were raised or the way we grew up. Now you're a lot more educated.
Yes.
Your circumstance is a little bit different. You have more observational data, we call it, because you went through life. And fortunately, I think things happen for a reason, because you becoming a social worker, you got inspired. You had
Yeah.
epiphany. It's like, hold on a second. Things can be a lot worse, number one, but that's not what I'm going to do to my children, because I don't want my kids to go through what I went through. I don't want that transfer of power.
Mm-mm.
So my question is, right now, what are you transferring as a mother, now as a wife? You're not 16 years anymore. You finished
Yeah.
high school. You are settled. You're very comfortable of who you are. And now you have discovered, right, your self-value. And that's, a lot of immigrants have a challenge with that. What's my self-value? Because we value ourselves according to what our family how our family value us,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
Right? This is our value. Then when you pull away from your tribe or your home world and you're by yourself and you don't know, how am I going to rediscover my value? Because my value was my family. Now my family's not around. Now I have to create my own value.
Yes.
See what happens. So can you just share with us, what are the challenges? Your kids now is second generation Americans. What are the challenges and what are you transferring of power to your kids? You did mention education, which is, I agree 100%, especially for girls. I'm not trying to
Yes.
be sexist or anything like that.
No, I
But
get it.
yeah, so it's just my culture. I'm empowering women, and I believe, unfortunately, still 2025 in the Western society is still male dominating. To
Of
give you an
course.
overview, when I graduated in 1999 from NYU Dental School, they the female graduate and the female dental profession was on the rise. Now we have more female dentists than male dentists. My generation and older, it was very much male dominating. Even
Yep.
in dental school, professors, right? Clinical directors, the majority were males. Now you go to Tufts University, even in Boston, the majority are female, which is so, it's not because, I don't want men to be in the field, but it's rewarding. I feel like this is our time. It's time for us to shine, but to put the female immigrant, we have to overperform, to overcompensate for us to shine enough for people to notice us. So it was interesting as an American female dentist before the 90s were all male dentists, but now, the scale has tipped. So it is amazing, because I think it's not because we make better practitioners. I think women are a lot more patient. The majority of women are more patient. They're sensitive. Like you said, we can relate, we connect to people, we're compassionate, and we make I believe we make better providers.
We're nurtured.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. So what is it that you see a challenge in your children, or what is it that you worried about the most as your children being the second American generations here?
So just in general, it's harder for an immigrant, or not an immigrant, coming from another culture, right? To achieve maybe things that predominantly the Caucasian um group can more easily achieve or get, right? So we don't come from money, right? That's one thing. I will not be able to provide my children with paying for their college, right? I didn't have that either, right? So I'm still stuck with student loans, which they'll probably loom forever, but I'm not even worried about it. But I do want my children, now that they're living at home, is like, I wish someone told me, I've been working since I was 13, like where I worked at a clothing store. I worked at like a corner store selling candy and chips and stuff like that in New York. But I wish someone had told me, save money, right? Because you're going to need it in the future. So that's something that I'm teaching my daughters. So now they're working. One just started working at Canopy Lake and the other one is interviewing. And it's like, right now you're under my house. You're living under my roof. I don't need you to help me to pay for anything. I want you to save money because it's going to get real in the future, right? So that's something that I'm trying to ingrain in them. Another thing, that growing up with that mentality from the Dominican Republic was, we don't embrace sexuality in our kids, and it's like it's a normal part of growing up, right? So I have two teenage girls who will have a boyfriend who like a boy or whatever, and it's so important to not saying that I'm condoning, right? But I am letting them express themselves and be free in a safe manner, if you know what I'm saying. In my house, that was never a thing growing up, right? My mom was like, don't let no one touch you. You can't come out pregnant, right? It's insane, right? And it's a lot of pressure on you as an individual, because you're like, first of all, you're a teenager, you're trying to navigate life, and it's like, it's hard enough as is, right? So that's another thing that I'm trying to break a generational curse, is talking to my children about, this is what life is, right? I understand you get these feelings, and I understand, you may get urges. It's okay. Let's talk about it. What can we do to help you be safe, right? That's another thing that all I heard was, don't do this. Don't let yourself be touched, right? Nothing about, birth control or this exists, or let's go talk to a doctor, right? Not that I regret my child. I love him to death, but it's like, if I would have had more information and felt a little bit more supported, right? But then again, I cannot blame my parents because they did not grow up with that, right? They also learned that that's not okay, right? These are things that you should not be doing. So that's another thing that I'm trying to teach my children. And, I feel like I've been a good role model in the educational aspect. Seeing my kids see me graduate was like the highlight of my life. It's like they're looking, wow, my mommy did that. You know what I mean? So education, absolutely number one important. Be nice to other people. Like, be yourself, help as many people as you can, right? Just be a good person overall, be a good human, right? Because it comes back to you tenfold. So that's, things that I'm teaching my children. And don't discriminate on anyone. Doesn't matter their race, their color, their nationality, the language that they speak, the clothing that they wear. None of that does not exist, right? And I grew up with that. I thank my parents for that they, it did instill that in me. And I grew up with I have no filter for anyone. Everyone to me is the same, right? If you're a human, you are the same, right? We're on the same level. I don't care what your status is. I don't care what your national, none of that. So I'm passing that on as well to my children. But yeah.
Wow. That is beautiful. That is beautiful. And they are so lucky to have you. So lucky to have you. No, I'm serious. I mean, you are a beautiful human being. But, it's funny that, and I agree with you 100%. It's funny when I came, I traveled Europe and United States all my life. And I visited Jordan too. I vacationed in Jordan, but being in Saudi Arabia, as conservative as Saudi, you can imagine how conservative Saudi Arabia was in the 70s and the 80s. Now it's all opened up. As conservative as Saudi Arabia, we never seen color. We never see color. And to go back to your point, when you go to the Dominican, although you're not born there, but you smell, you breathe the air, it's like, oh my God, it's home. Funny you said that, because I went to Egypt for the first time. My husband's from Egypt, and my dad graduated from University of Egypt, because back in the 50s and the 60s, the two most famous universities or education system was in Lebanon or Egypt.
Yeah.
So my mom's sister graduated from Egypt, my dad graduated from Egypt. And when I went to Egypt for the first time, I've been married to my husband for about 33 years, and he's been away from Egypt for about 40 years. I walked through the airport and I landed, and the moment I walked out of the airport into the open space and I breathed the air, I was like, I cried, because I get goosebumps just talking about it. I cried. I said, I'm home. I never been to Egypt, but it has to, only immigrants can understand. They think I'm crazy. They can understand where I'm coming from. It has that smell. I think it's just the feel of like, I'm home. I'm among my family.
Yep.
So that's definitely number one. But even in Egypt, we don't see color. You know, the stigma and the stereotype about Arab immigrants that we're racist, we only want Arabs, we don't like the Western world, if we don't like white people, whatever.
Yeah.
But
Right.
it's absolutely true, not true, absolutely
Right.
false. We see no color, we see no religion, we see it's all the stereotype of the West. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that you are transferring that power to your children, because that's the only way we can actually champion the stigma and break the stereotype here in the United States.
Yes.
And I walk around, tell all my Caucasian American friends, you all got a problem with color.
Yeah.
I don't see it. I never see it. I see you as a human being, because to
Exactly.
me, a human, I mean, even human, the origin of the word human is a person of earth. So
Yes.
as long as we're alive on this earth, we're humans, right? So it's a Germanic or Latin origin of it, and it means a person of earth. So who am I to tell you, you have no right to live, you have no right to survive, you have no right to be here? No, if you're doing your job, and if you're showing me effort, and if you are credible, and you are accountable, and you're responsible, and you're in peace, and you're a peaceful person, nice, decent human being, I
Yeah.
have no problem. I don't care where you came from, your background, your religion, your color, whatever culture. I would respect your culture as long as you respect my culture. And
Exactly.
that is a beautiful thing. And I think this country, like I said, I've been here about 37 years. I came in 1988. I was 19 years old. And the country feels so different. I don't know what happened to the United States after the 90s. Just the whole country just changed. And me and Giselle talk about it a lot. And other, team members that not from, this country, or they were born here of a different heritage. And it's fascinating. And I tell them all the time, the United States never used to be that way. And when I landed here in 1988, it was so much like back home.
Yes.
Everybody was living cohesively. They respect other culture. They were so excited to see you from other culture. They excited to learn about your country and your
Same.
customs. Yeah, right now it's just like, I don't know if technology and social media has anything to do with it, or technological devices just
I
kind of
believe so.
separating that. Yeah, the
I
people
believe
are
so.
not that social anymore. But I guess my next question to you is, what would be your advice for a young woman who is thinking about leaving the Dominican? Now, I'm not sure if that's true, but what I heard through the grapevine, that a lot of Dominicans are not interested in leaving DR and coming to United States. Is that true or not? And but what kind of advice we would give a young woman that she had it back home and it's like, I gotta go.
So it's so much so where the country itself is like, when you go there, it's not that it's unlivable, because it's not. There's no like political tension. There's none of that, right? Um, it's more the cost of living. I feel like my advice would be, for a young person over there, educate yourself, right? You can achieve, we go back to education, right? We can achieve becoming, whatever it is that your passion is, pursuing that to the highest level. You can do that in our country. And your cost of living is not as high as here in the United States, right? Because it's different over there. You can purchase your own land. That's your land. You don't owe the government or the state anything, right? You buy the land, you build on that land, you're done, right? You don't owe that. So my advice would be, educate yourself, live within your means. And if you're coming into this country, or you're looking to come to this country, you have to understand that, even if you get an education here, right, it's still very expensive to live here, right? You don't have the same freedoms in this country as you do in your own country, right? So educate yourself and do the best you can with what you have within your own country. Not that I'm saying that the United States is you can't get ahead, you can't succeed. Yes, you can. But it comes with a cost, right? It comes with a cost. You lose yourself here. There are people who want to go back to their country, but are too stuck working and in the same routine of working and then supporting myself and doing this. You know what I mean? And, the majority of Dominicans work here and send money home, right? They send money back home and they build back home. And at some point they decide, I'm going to go back home, right? And that's my goal. That's my dream, is to, at some point I want to retire and live in the Dominican Republic. But when is that going to come to me, right? Because of the situation here. Yes, you can save some, but not really, right? You know what I mean? So it's hard because it's kind of like you're sucked into the US and you can't seem to get out of this, right? It becomes very difficult. So I would advise that anyone, and, I'm going to speak for my own country because I don't know about other countries, that's planning to come here. You have the opportunity to educate yourself in your country and you can achieve great things in your own country, right? I think the ideology of the US, the American dream, that's done. It is so done, right? But people don't see that until they get here and they're like, because there are people who are coming here recent times, who don't last a year and they're like, oh, I can't do this, right? But to get here, they borrowed money, they sold land or they sold whatever, right? So now they're going back to nothing because they try to achieve the American dream. You know what I mean? So it's just that would be my advice. Do what you can within your own homeland, right? Because it's not the same. It's not unicorns and rainbows and you know what I mean? It's not, right? And I was born here, but that's my advice.
No, it's absolutely beautiful, and I agree with it 100%. And I've been telling, even my husband extended family, there are a lot of his cousins' kids. They're young, and it's like, oh, I would love to go to America. I want to apply for lottery immigration. I'm like, don't.
I mean,
really.
come visit.
Yeah, visit for sure, for sure. But it's like, tell me exactly what you're trying to achieve, and then I can talk to them, a little bit more about, okay, get your degree first, don't jump into things. And I said it in so many different episodes. I think you need to do your research. You need to figure out where you want to go, why you want to go, and how you want to go. So it's the why and the how. Don't just leave. Back in my day, my generation older, we just jumped ship. It was like, okay, let's go. We start. It was a lot easier too, but things are not as easy as they seem, and the grass is greener on the other side. Not necessarily. We have reached the end of our hour, if you can believe it, and I hope that you would agree to come back. Thank you for listening and thank you for watching, and I hope you guys enjoy this content. If you did, please like, share, and hit the notification button so you won't miss any episodes. And as a reminder, these episodes are uploaded every single Wednesday on the Apple Podcast and the Spotify. And I hope to see you next time on the Mindset Mastery Moment. Thank you, Naomi, for coming on. And like I said, I hope you agree to come back because we barely scratched the surface. I hope to see you next time. This is Slava the Jordanian.